Hello and welcome to Big Rissue, the podcast where we track the first 100 days of Rishi Sunak's premiership, see if he gets his plans done or if they get snowed off. Today I'm joined by Ben Blissett, TLDR UK's lead writer.
Hello.
And Rory Taylor, TLDR's social media coordinator.
Hello.
How you both doing?
Good.
Snowing outside.
Snowing.
Yeah.
Did you catch that subtle reference?
I did. It was very topical, Jack.
Thank you,
It was
thank
very
you.
nice.
Very good.
No, the snow's been great. Unlike you, Jack, I actually quite enjoy it. I know that you hate fun. That's what I've heard.
No, I won't have that.
You're too busy inside tweeting.
I
to
don't
notice the
enjoy
snow.
inconvenience, and
Yeah.
the snow brings a lot of that.
I see. No,
It
that's
does,
fair.
yeah.
That is fair.
And also, if we were going to go out and have a snowball fight later, I'd be much more up for it. The snow,
Why haven't we done
It makes
that?
stuff look nicer, I guess, but it also just makes you wet and your feet cold and your shoes get gross.
But none of that matters.
What
None
do
of
you
that
mean?
matters when it's beautiful.
Magical.
You listen to Christmas music and all
It's,
that. None of that matters.
yeah.
It's a minor inconvenience that you put up
It's
with
a-
for the beauty of
It's
the
a
moment.
bit of a issue for me, if I'm honest.
We're doing this again.
Okay, so let's talk about Rishi Sunak.
Yes.
Okay,
Never
Ben.
get there.
For 40 marks,
Thank you.
why are some Conservatives frustrated with the current Conservative Party?
It's a great question, Jack. Thanks for asking. Basically, the Conservative Party has, in the last 6 months, had 3 different leaders.
Yep.
The first leader was very popular with the Conservative Party membership, was polling very high with them. When the summer leadership election was going through, there was huge petitions to try and keep Boris Johnson on the ballot paper. Then there was the summer leadership election, which Rishi Sunak lost when he was in the membership vote. Liz Truss was installed. The Conservative MPs ousted Liz Truss and put Rishi Sunak in. So there's all the indications are that the party membership have not got what they wanted this year. They didn't get Boris Johnson, and then they chose Liz Truss as his successor. They didn't get him. So some have become frustrated, both on the backbenches and within the party membership, at what they perceive as a lack of democracy within the party itself, which has been particularly demonstrated this year.
Wow. How many marks giving that, Rory?
You said it was a 40-mark question. That's a
question.
lot of marks.
It was pretty brief.
You can't give full marks for anything, really, can you?
No. Thanks for explaining, Ben.
Yeah.
That was,
No
that
worries,
was
Jack.
great.
I enjoyed it
40
greatly.
out of 40.
Thank you.
So, some of those frustrated people, so frustrated that they formed a new organisation.
They have, Jack.
They've called themselves the Conservative Democratic Organisation.
They have.
What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jack. So it's an organisation, as I say, that it's been set up because they're frustrated with the current Conservative Party in the way that it is. They've sort of issued a statement this week, and they put out a press release sort of explaining why they're frustrated, which is basically what I've just explained. They've said that they're going to work to try and empower the grassroots and restore democracy in the party. They've got some pretty big backers. But basically, I would assume that they're going to operate in a similar way to like the European Research Group, just a group of sort of backbench MPs, maybe some members of the wider Conservative Party as well, that have a particular interest and could cause problems for Rishi Sunak. The fact that they've already sort of stated their hostility towards Rishi Sunak and the setup of the party, is already an indication that could be causing problems for him. They haven't got any specific interest in terms of policy or anything like that. But this idea and the fact that they've been so explicit in their frustration with the party itself, and with just the fact that Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister, shows that they're just going to be working to sort of aggregate and frustrate the current government.
And is this an organisation that's being led by MPs, or is it an external organisation that's trying to pressure them more like a momentum for Labour?
So Lord Cruddas is, I think he's the president of the organisation. He's also, he's quite a big figure within Conservative Party circles anyway. He's a huge donor to the Conservative Party.
Put in the House of Lords by Boris Johnson, I think. So
Okay.
he is from that wing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Priti Patel has also been a vocal supporter. So this is very much within the sort of, the not just the Commons, because obviously it's led by a member of the Lords, but very much like it seems very much like a parliamentary group, but I would assume that they're also going to get some, they're trying to present themselves as on the side of the party membership. So I would be surprised if they didn't also have members of the party membership supporting it too.
Yeah. I mean, given the fact that we went through 3 prime ministers or something, and now Rishi Sunak has lasted almost as long as Liz Truss, it's starting to feel like that civil war part of the Conservative Party might be gone, but this kind of shows that it isn't.
Yeah.
That those dividing lines are still very much there, and that times ahead are going to be difficult for the party, basically.
Absolutely. And this, again, I know that this seems to be like a thread through this entire podcast, and which, it could be quite boring, but it's important to say, and it is basically the main thing, which is that the Conservative Party is factionalised at the minute, and every single time we do this podcast, there seems to be more and more and more evidence of that. And this is just yet again more evidence that they're factional and they're struggling to keep themselves together.
Do you think their kind of dream situation is getting rid of Rishi Sunak, or are they thinking the Conservatives are probably going to lose the next election, so let's change the leadership rules so that when we replace him after the next election, it goes to a Boris Johnson type person? I think
ultimately with all of this, it's that they just want Boris Johnson back. I think they see that them as the glory days. I think they see it as likely that he's going to stand again. I think that they know that if they were to topple Sunak now, that getting Johnson back is almost impossible. So I think they probably are.
It's kind of a long-term vision.
Yeah, long-term vision, exactly. They just want Boris back, and they'll do anything to get it.
Yeah.
So what practical issues could these MPs cause, or this group cause, for Rishi Sunak? Obviously, it's kind of more division. It's a good example of more division, which isn't good for him politically, his kind of soft power. Yeah. But is there any kind of tangible issues that they present?
Yeah, so I think, as I said, I think one of the big things is that they're going to... And Rory sort of alluded to this as well, is that in the longer term, they may cause problems for Sunak. I think in the immediate term, I can't see them really doing that much.
Sure.
But when we get to more conversations about leadership, about next leader, if the pressure on Sunak increases, they could become a driving force to try and get rid of him. I think as things stand, Sunak looks quite safe. I think, we've spoken about some of the issues he's faced in the last few weeks, but if you remember when we did Truss issues, it's in no way comparable to the level of issues that she faced. So I think that when things start to intensify, that they might be a driving force again. In the same way that the ERG, their power, they sort of cropped up now and then with Brexit to cause problems for the government. I think they'll operate in a very similar way.
And the ERG clearly had a real focus on Brexit, EU, all that kind of stuff. These people, as you've mentioned, have a real focus on kind of democracy, the element of control through these elections, the fact they've ended up with a leader which wasn't their first or second choice. Do we have any other insight to what this group actually want to achieve, what kind of ideology they have, or is it currently primarily centered around kind of improving the selection of leaders?
I actually think that their press statements have been quite vague, and I agree that in the answers that I've given so far, it just seems that they vaguely want something to do with democracy. So I'll just read out a quote from their press statement this week and see what you make of this, because I think this probably explains best. They said that the coronation of Rishi Sunak 1 month after he was rejected by party members has finally ended members' faith in any party democracy. The result is a widening gulf between the parliamentary party and the grassroots. But as the Conservative government pushes taxes to a 70-year high and rising, there is also an electorally fatal gulf opening up between the leadership and voters. No wonder our poll ratings are so dire. So it's clear, so they're frustrated about tax, they're frustrated about their polling numbers, and they see the fact that the membership hasn't had their say as part of that. I think that what that alludes to is the fact that they want to change the internal democratic element of the membership. I think that what their main aim is to try and change 22 committee rules to have more party membership input into the next leader would be my assumption.
Yeah, it seems like it.
It's relatively vague.
Yeah, and there's clearly some other thought process there. It's not just the leadership, it's the tax issue, the things they see as a difference between memberships, and potentially they didn't say it, but like the kind of criticisms of Sunak being too centrist and trying to push the party further right. You can't necessarily read that into this, but you can see this grouping could have further ideologies. Speaking of which, MPs that are supporting them, is there anything there that gives us a real indication?
I mean, the fact that you have Boris diehards, Priti Patel, Lord Cruddas, already mentioned as supporting it. I think it's clear that, as we were saying earlier, that they want the party membership to have a say because the party membership like Boris Johnson.
Sure.
And there's a good chance that he might stand again if the situation seems preferable. So I think that they are trying to change the rules so that Johnson stands more of a chance that he can get back in, ultimately.
Okay, so that's clearly one grouping that's a threat to Sunak. Maybe not specifically to him right now, but it's a real sign of division. And as you say, it could be an issue for his successor when we make a new podcast with a new pun name in a few weeks' time. But that's not the only group that kind of Sunak has issues with. The other one is a group of 40 MPs who have written to the Prime Minister about tax.
Yes.
Do you want to run us through what they had to say and kind of why this is an issue potentially for him?
I mean, very simply, they just think taxes are too high. I mean, I think this...
As do the other group by the sound of it.
This is what I was literally just going to say that as well. As with the other group, they see Sunak and his approach to the economy, increasing taxes is not what they want. There was a lot of the membership wanted Liz Truss, who was very much about cutting tax, even though it almost, tank the economy. So I think that they see what Rishi Sunak has done as not what the party membership wanted. They want low taxes. So they've written to the Prime Minister saying that taxes are too high, and they've referenced this report by Conservative Way Forward group which suggests suggests different ways of cutting taxes. They sort of tell him, do what this report says.
And what is in that report? What's the Conservative Way Forward group actually suggesting when it comes to tax?
Yeah, so they produced a report titled Defunding Politically Motivated Campaigns, Saving Taxpayers Billions by Ending Waste and Division. As you can already probably tell, it's a fairly right-wing group. You wouldn't see a title like that coming from a Labour group or even sort of a centrist Conservative group. That is a classic, very right-wing libertarian sort of end the woke sort of group. So it's exactly what it is exactly that.
Yeah.
So they suggest they can find about £7 billion in savings by cutting wasteful groups like charities. So that's basically what they're looking at. So in the report, they find about 5.2-ish billion pounds that can be cut from Quangos, £212 million on EDI-related public procurement. EDI is...
Equality, diversity, and inclusion.
Yes. So, again... very right-wing group.
Sure.
£778 million on charities, £557 million on EDI positions and training. So all of that totaled together is about £7 billion. So they've just basically written to Rishi Sunak saying, do those things, cut those things, you can cut £7 billion. The report, though, it's only about 40 pages. It's quite light on detail.
We spotted errors in it after very light.
I skimmed it.
You presented this page to me and it claimed that HS2 are spending £500 million on equality, diversity and inclusion, to which I said, there's no way. How is that possible? Which company is receiving £500 million for equality training? Because if they were, that would be a household name of a company, surely. That's massive. If HS2 alone are spending that, they're earning billions and billions. They'd have a massive office in Canary Wharf. We'd have heard of them. And then you did some digging.
I did some digging, and I just want to put a couple of things on the record, which is that... I couldn't find in the report where that is. Now, that's not to say it's not there, but I couldn't find that. I did find later on a reference to some money being given to that's being paid to about 4 employees who worked in HS2 to do with EDI. And that total came to about £350,000, which you could theoretically round up to £500,000.
I mean, it's a big round.
But that would mean that is a big round, and it would mean that they've got that confused. However, I don't know that that's what they've done.
Sure.
I have messaged them, and I'll let you know what we get back from them.
It's either that they decided to round up £350,000 to £500,000, which... Sure, we'll let that slide. And then they typoed it to billion in another point in the report and just forgot to change it. Or they're spending another X number of millions that they just haven't accounted for.
You think if you had that claim, you would put it in your report?
Well, and also if you had evidence that they were spending £500 million on EDI, which just makes no sense anyway. But even if you did, why would you then later in the report complain about £350 million worth, £350,000 worth of spending when previously you said it was nearly £500 million?
There's 2 things as well. Is that one, I couldn't find that claim referenced later on, and secondly, the claim in this section isn't referenced. So I can't even check that.
Anyway,
one other point that makes me think that it could be an error is that on the same page that I found that £350,000 figure, they spelt billion, BILONN. So
2 N's. That's even more than a billion, apparently. That's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm skeptical, but as I said, I haven't found anything. But
I think it's a legitimate area that some people would want to cut.
Yes.
They see diversity and inclusion activity as wasteful and let the free market do what it wants. It's an argument that you can have, but let's get some fact checkers and some. Let's read through your report before you're telling the Prime Minister.
Even before you do fact checkers, just do grammar check. Like get the words. Get the words all spelled correctly.
Looking at your notes, Ben, one of the MPs supporting the letter is Esther McVeigh, and she is a very anti-HS2 person anyway. Like they see the entire, we should say HS2, High Speed 2 is a big rail project in the UK. Very expensive and taking a long time. There's a whole wing of the party who think it's a massive waste of money and waste of time. Like they're obviously going after it for they don't like the EDI stuff, but also I think they'd probably rather see the entire thing scrapped as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And as I say, I mean, it's just a very right-wing group they spend a good section of the report talking about how we could save £778 million spending on wasteful things like charities, and it's just I don't know. It's quite a strange one, but there's got a lot of support. As I say, 40 MPs, and these two things that we've spoken about today. This new group being set up, the CDO, and this letter being sent to the Prime Minister with 40 Tory MPs, both of those happened very closely together yesterday. This was a huge, I should say for record, I think it was Sunday. Because we don't know when this goes out. But
do you think that was coordinated, or is it just coincidence?
I think it's possible that it's coordinated. I think it's also possible that it's chance, but considering they're both being highly critical of the Prime Minister from the same sort of faction of the Conservative Party, I think it's possible that they've all mentioned it in WhatsApp groups and they've decided to put them both out at the same time.
I'm curious, maybe from you, Rory, on the effectiveness of this strategy. Obviously, 40 MPs reckon that the Prime Minister ought to be cutting taxes. No one loves tax rises, so I'm sure when you're polling the electorate, they're not hugely keen on increased taxes. But equally, the economy's not in a great state. It's hard to see a very viable, sensible long-term strategy that doesn't involve tax rises, especially considering what happened with Liz Truss.
Yeah.
So do you think, is this just the Conservatives fully abandoning their previous kind of identity around responsible taxation and stuff? Or is there a genuine case that can make the electorate?
I think it's hard to say because it is obviously a split in the party.
Yeah.
So these 40 or whoever... I don't think they've changed their position. I think these are the MPs who've always had that low tax, low regulation view. But then you've got the Rishi Sunak wing who would call themselves, more realist. And they can. Rishi Sunak himself and Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, say they don't want to be raising taxes.
Yeah.
They don't like that it's the highest tax burden for 70 years, but they say they have no choice and they have to do it. So these kind of moves by the kind of low tax wing of the party. I don't see kind of pushing the Prime Minister into doing anything because he already knows that he doesn't like these raising taxes, but he sees it as kind of inevitable and necessary.
It's an interesting just electoral strategy. Like, as I mentioned, obviously, the Conservatives have for a long time marketed themselves as being prudent financially and making the tough but serious decisions or whatever. And then this seems to be kind of a flagrant disregard of it. Sure, maybe you can argue that some of these tax cuts could be justified through kind of politically motivated spending cuts, which I guess is fair enough. You can make that argument. But it does seem to be a change from the Tory party of old that would have said, right, no one likes tax rises, but it's the right thing to do. Here's why, which is more what Sunak's doing, as you say.
I think it's the Liz Truss saga kind of was quite a defining moment where they saw what happened when Liz Truss tried to go hard on tax cuts and everything, and it kind of immediately imploded. They obviously weren't happy that their project went down like that with the electorate and with Conservative MPs and everything. But for a lot of that wing of the party, you've got like Kwasi Kwarteng now saying, who was the Chancellor under Liz Truss, obviously, saying that they got, I can't remember the exact word he used. It was something like he got overexcited, but I don't know if that's the exact quote. Basically saying these are all the right ideas, but we didn't do it in the right time frame. We did it too quickly, all at once, whatever. They very much still believe it was the right thing to do, and I don't think they're going to drop that anytime soon based on...
I mean, it's unsurprising. These people have reached this point in their adult life and their careers. They spent a long time developing these views. One instance isn't going to prove them wrong. They're rightly or wrongly so certain of the ideas. That's what drove them to high office. So therefore, that one instance they can easily write off as whatever other explanation. And they could be right. Maybe if it was implemented differently. It's just interesting if we start to see polling come out as to whether this kind of thing is popular. Whether the electorate are going to say, oh, great, we do want lower taxes, or whether they're going to say, well, you'd already
I think
tried this and mess it up.
I think it's an interesting thing because I think all of these sort of really right-wing people
Yeah.
conflate what the party membership want
Yes.
with what the wider public want. And I think they see this as, democracy, the reason that our polling's doing badly is because you didn't listen to the members. It's like the members...
Or a
You
tiny
do not
fraction
get
anyway.
elected
Exactly.
to government
Yeah.
on your members.
Yeah. No.
You get voted into government on the middle, like 10% of people that are swing voters. They don't equate. So I think that's the fundamental error
Yeah.
that they often make.
It's not like the high tax burden on its own that's pushing the polling down for the Conservatives. It's a high tax burden combined with poor public services and everything else that goes with it. The kind of state the whole country's in. It's not as simple as just saying let's cut taxes and let everything kind of get better. But
it seems like these two groups are determined to try and get change made in the way that they think it needs to be. They're pressuring Sunak. It's another issue he's facing among this kind of continued fractious party. Something Cameron thought could be solved by a Brexit vote, and it turns out wow, they just like arguing with each other. Really,
well really didn't it? Uniting the party.
It went brilliantly. Thank you both for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Interesting conversation as ever.
Thanks for asking the questions, Jack.
I made up some of them.
You did.
Some of them
You
were
did.
on
They were
paper.
really genuinely. They were very good.
No,
They were very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was very good, and I was also Jack Kelly. I was joined by Ben Blissett and Rory Taylor. This was produced by Scarlett Watchorn, and did both of you do stuff? Jeremy Walker? Am I giving you credit? Okay, Jeremy's getting no credit. He's new today. He's just watching. Another day he'll be in the credits.
Sorry, a live audience.
A live audience. Yeah, thank you very much. And it was edited probably also by Scarlett Watchorn. Goodbye. Oh, this was a 326. This was a TLDR production for 326 Limited.
Fucking hell.
Hello and welcome to the Big Rissue, the podcast where we're tracking the first 100 days of Rishi Sunak's premiership, seeing what he gets up to, and if he gets cancelled because of snow.
No.
Why are... I got a question here. I got a question that's got so little context.